Hey everyone, and welcome back. So today I want to talk about the University of Phoenix, an institution that was meant to revolutionize education, bring working people back into the classroom, and truly stamp itself on the educational landscape for good. And yet, it may have seen its highs, but now it's seriously seeing its lows. So what happened to the University of Phoenix? There was a building in Phoenix, Arizona that used to represent the future of higher education. It housed the headquarters of what was, for a time, the largest university in the United States. At its peak, nearly 500,000 students were enrolled. It had its name on a stadium. It was listed on the NASDAQ. It was, by every conventional measure of success, an extraordinary institution. It was also, by every meaningful measure of education, barely a university at all. To understand what went wrong and why it matters, you need to start somewhere else entirely, somewhere far less glamorous. You need to start with Harold Wilson, a small office in Whitechapel, and a question that a British Prime Minister thought was worth asking on Easter Sunday in 1963. Sitting on holiday in the Isle of Scilly, what would it mean to build a university that was genuinely open to everyone? Wilson called it the University of the Air. The idea was simple and radical in equal measure, that the technology of the age, television and radio, could carry real university education into the homes of people who had never had access to it. Working adults, people who had left school early, people who couldn't afford to give up 3 years of their lives for a campus degree. Education not as a privilege of circumstance, but as a genuine public good, available to anyone with the will to learn. He tasked Jenny Lee, the youngest woman to ever be elected to Parliament at the time, daughter of a Scottish miner, one of the most formidable politicians of her generation, with making it happen. What she built became the Open University, established by Royal Charter in April 1969. Its founding chancellor, Geoffrey Crowther, set out the mission without ambiguity. To cater, he said, for the many thousands of people fully capable of higher education who, for one reason or another, do not get it. From the beginning, the BBC was central to that mission. David Attenborough, then controller of BBC Two, took personal responsibility for making the idea a practical reality. From 1971, Open University programmes were broadcast on BBC Two, lectures, demonstrations, academic discussions, occupying late nights, early mornings and weekend slots. It ran that way for 35 years. The last course-based programme was broadcast on BBC Two's Learning Zone in December 2006, ending an era that had quite literally brought university teaching into millions of British living rooms. By that point, the technology had moved on, and the OU moved with it. DVD, then online delivery, then full digital infrastructure it operates today. The Open University currently has around 200,000 students. It is the largest university in the United Kingdom by enrolment. It was named University of the Year in 2025, and it continues to expand, to innovate and to educate. Now consider what John Sperling was building in America at almost the exact same time. Sperling founded the University of Phoenix in 1976, just 7 years after Wilson's University of the Air received its charter. Like the Open University, it identified a genuine gap, working adults who couldn't access traditional higher education. Like the Open University, he built something outside the conventional campus model. He even had an academic background himself, a former professor at San Jose State. But where Wilson asked what it would mean to educate the nation, Sperling asked something different. He asked what it would mean to sell education at scale. The University of Phoenix was a wholly owned subsidiary of the Apollo Education Group, a publicly traded corporation on the NASDAQ. Its shareholders weren't educators. They were investors, and the institution it produced reflected that priority with remarkable consistency. Through the 1990s and into the 2000s, the University of Phoenix expanded at a pace that left traditional universities bewildered. Campuses opened across America, online degree programs proliferated, enrollment climbed into the hundreds of thousands. By 2010, it had over 470,000 students and revenues of nearly $5 billion a year. A corporation selling qualifications and doing it spectacularly well. The question nobody at Apollo was particularly interested in asking was what those students were actually getting. A 2010 report found that the online graduation rate at the time was just 5%, not 50, 5. Meaning that of every 100 students who enrolled, 95 left without completing their degree, but not without debt. Because the University of Phoenix had built its entire operation around a single insight. It didn't matter whether students finished. What mattered was that they enrolled. Enrollment triggered access to federal student aid. Federal student aid meant money flowing to Apollo. The students weren't the customers. They were the mechanism through which public funds were extracted. Recruiters were paid based on how many students they signed up, and their targets were enrollment numbers, not graduated outcomes, not academic suitability, not whether the program made sense for the person sitting across the desk. Recruiters were stationed near military bases specifically to capture GI Bill funding and military tuition assistance. Veterans and active service members were targeted with particular intensity because their federal education entitlements were particularly generous. And to get those students through the door, the university made promises it knew it couldn't keep. Its marketing campaign, called Let's Get to Work, ran across television, radio, and digital platforms. It prominently featured major corporations, Microsoft, AT&T, Twitter, Adobe, strongly implying that the University of Phoenix had special partnerships with these companies that created job opportunities specifically for its graduates. The Federal Trade Commission investigated those claims. They found that the relationships were fabricated or widely exaggerated. The companies named hadn't agreed to recruit Phoenix graduates. The advertisements were deceptive. Internal documents obtained during the investigation showed that the university's own leadership knew the employer partnership claims were exaggerated and ran the campaign anyway. In 2019, the University of Phoenix settled with the FTC for a record $191 million, $50 million in cash, the remaining $141 million in direct debit cancellations for students who had been misled. The US Department of Education subsequently forgave a further $37 million in federal loans for over 1,200 affected students. By that point, the collapse was already well advanced. Enrollment had been falling since 2010. By 2020, it stood at around 84,000, a decline of more than 80% from its peak in a single decade. Campus after campus closed. By October 2024, every physical location had shut down, save from the single headquarters building in Phoenix itself. The institution that had once put its name on a stadium was now barely a website. Here is what makes the comparison with the Open University so striking. Both institutions broke the traditional university model. Both served non-traditional students. Both embraced distance learning before it was fashionable. Both grew to enormous scale. The Open University and the University of in structural terms solving the same problem. But they were asking fundamentally different questions. The Open University asked, how do we actually educate these people? The University of Phoenix asked, how do we monetize their aspiration? That difference, that single difference in intent, produced two completely opposite outcomes. One institution, built on public purpose and genuine educational mission, is today the largest university in Britain and still growing. The other, built on shareholder returns and enrolment metrics, collapsed under the weight of its own logic, taking hundreds of thousands of students' money and life chances with it. The University of Phoenix, although still running, is a shell of its former self. It failed. And it didn't fail because it abandoned the values of higher education. It failed because it never had them to begin with. Education was never the point. It was always the packaging. And the question that leaves hanging, the uncomfortable one, is how many institutions currently sitting behind centuries of tradition, ancient stone and Latin mottos, have quietly adopted the same logic at a less naked pitch. When a university measured itself primarily by league table position, graduate salary statistics, and student satisfaction scores, when it invests in luxury accommodation and marketing budgets ahead of teaching staff, when the credential matters more than what was learnt to earn it, it's further along the same road than it would care to admit. The University of Phoenix just had the honesty to drop the theatre.